Welcome in to Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day. To join the program, send us a text on our text line at 606-314-0161. Here's Mike and Terry.
Well, I wanted to welcome you to Life and Times again today. You're here with Mike and Terry Day. We're here in the studio. Now, a lot of times you hear us talking about on the show, though, that we're sitting out on the front porch when we come up with a lot of these ideas. So just imagine you're sitting on the front porch with us, because that's where we really get a lot of these things together and we start making our notes. And matter of fact, just the other day we were talking about that we were on our vacation in Florida, had a opportunity to be at our condominium down there. And my mom and dad left that condominium for us. And started really looking at the scripture that talks about a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children. And I was recently talking to a friend of mine, and he has a pretty large portfolio of real estate. And he said, it's really a great thing to be able to say that I'm actually going to be able to affect my children's 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 children. And that's a tremendous thing in life. And the first part of that comes with planning, and we're going to talk about planning retirement and really what that kind of takes to do that. And I know that a lot of people are late in life already, and then maybe they haven't really planned a whole lot, but you know what? It's never too late. And those are some of the things we really want to go into today. And we're going to take different portions of it, different mindsets of it, how people think about money, how people think about retirement, how they think about the different things that are out there. Sometimes all of this is just overwhelming. You hear the word mutual fund, and it sets off a short circuit in somebody's brain, and we're going to kind of maybe talk about some of those terms and how they apply, and really give people an opportunity to get a real basic knowledge of what needs to happen, and then a basic plan we'll probably go into in the last segment today, and really kind of just what you could do to get started today. And it's really a lot about just taking real simple steps, basic steps, small ones. They don't have to be big, huge ones, just small steps, and get started. So that's kind of where we're going to go with it today. We were talking about my parents retired. They retired in 1985, and they moved to Florida. And it's kind of an interesting process. It almost kind of freaked me out. They sold basically everything they had except for a few things. What'd they keep, Terry?
Well, they gave us that dining room table with the hutch, that one that expands, and we gave your computer is on the table in our bedroom, in our sitting room.
In our recording studio.
And then the hutch, Gabriel has that. And
my
that's
oldest
his.
son.
Yes, that's our oldest son. They kind of gave out some of the items, but
they
then
basically
they sold
kept their treasures, the photos, all the things like that, gifts from family and friends, and went through all of those types of things. Now, basically, they both passed away. My mom in 2003, and my dad in 2006, and but they left. I've got two brothers. They left an inheritance to us, and it affected our lives. It really did. It gave us opportunities to do some things that we probably wouldn't be able to do, including we've talked about on the show about buying the farm.
Right.
Not literally, but we literally bought a farm, not the figurative farm, and so one of those things where we did that, and it allowed us the opportunity to do that. It gave us some opportunity to be able to go and do a few things when those situations were presented. We were able to fulfill
it's that timing, because we had saved, and because your dad and mom had given us an inheritance. We were positioned. We were positioned so that when a good opportunity came, that and of course we asked God. We were led by the Holy Spirit, but we were able to walk into that opportunity. Had we not saved, and had we not had an inheritance, we might not have been able to take advantage of that opportunity that God wanted us to have.
Yeah. A lot of this show is about, you hear the practical stuff that's going on, but you have to understand, we really want you to know that we are absolutely all about Jesus Christ. We are all about God. We are all about ministry. But what we have found is that just in walking life out and living in our current times, the things that are being lost, the things that are not taught to our children in school. They don't know how to balance a checkbook.
No.
They don't know what the different types of financial accounts that may be able to affect their life. And we figure if we get on here and we talk about these things in relationship to, number one, how God brought us to the point where we are, how he gave us the wisdom and the knowledge and put the right people in our life, those divine appointments that we've had to garner information, to pull it from different places. It's really been one of those situations where you just can't look at what's happened and believe that it happened any other way than God being involved in our life. And I mean, I know you're that way a whole lot, Steph. I mean, you just such a young, vibrant individual, but yet, I mean, God has had his hand all over your life.
Absolutely. And I even include you all in this. In every season of my life, God's placed someone in my life to kind of be a guide for me. And from a very early age, I had wonderful parents that taught me about a lot of these different things that you guys have even talked about. And then as I progressed out of high school, I began my career into the recording industry, and there was someone there. I had a gentleman who basically he and his wife took me under their wing. And I actually lived in Asheville, North Carolina for about a year and a half so. And he taught me everything that I learned in recording, and actually lived in their condo as their tenant for a year. And he taught me what it was to be a good tenant, to do those type things. Then I moved to West Virginia, get married, and God just blesses me abundantly here. And sure enough, I still have people that pour into me daily. My Pastor Kevin West, he pours into my heart daily. And now, after just listening to your all show, there's always been a moment where God has just opened a door for somebody like yourselves to pour into me to get wisdom at a young age that nobody else probably is going to get anywhere else. That's I've been listening to your all show, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go home and check on this. I got to check my fire alarms. I want to check my homeowner's policy and to see what kind of coverage do I have? And it spilled over into like my car insurance and things like that.
Yes.
So now I'm hearing all these terms today, and I'm getting excited because when I was growing up, mutual fund just meant everybody was happy. Everybody's having a good time.
Well, we're going to have some mutual fund, and we're going to talk about mutual funds today. So yeah, it's going to be one of those things. I mean, and it is. I mean, I know you just said that there are so many divine appointments in your life that you see where God put somebody in place to help you out, and that's what we're trying to do here. This is about ministry. It's not about us getting on here and just to hear ourselves talk. We want to be able to pour into people in a manner and in a way that can affect your lives. I believe God's called me to certain things. He's given me gifts and talents and abilities, just like he does everybody else. And I believe that this is ours. This is something that Terry and I can take on and kind of give you the experiences that we've had in a 27-year marriage, and how things worked out for us, and the areas that we can absolutely see where God has put this knowledge, these individuals, and this stuff in our lives, and then we can share that with you. So you know what? You don't have to wait 27 years to get all this experience. You can get it now, and kind of move forward. And it's supposed to be about not starting all over again. I don't want my kids to start all over again. I want them to have the benefit of knowing what I know and garnering what I've garnered, and saving what I've saved, and that they get a chance to start and maybe build it bigger. And that's really, I think, what God really wants us to do. I mean, it's the way it should be in ministry. It's the way it should be in family. And those are really some of the big things that we want to touch on today. People's ideas about money are, money has a bad rap,
Yeah.
Very bad rap.
Yeah, you got one verse of scripture that says the love of money is the root of all evil. And everybody go, oh yeah, money's evil. It's like, no, it's not what it says. It says the love of money. Money is nothing but a tool. So either you can let money work for you, or you can let it run you. Now, those are the two things that a lot of people do. But we have decided to let it be a tool and let it help us. And my parents, they were very faithful to save and to put aside money, to understand the terms about how it was. I mean, now my dad, he grew up in a time and worked during a time where you worked for a single company, and they had a pension plan, and they had insurance, and they had all these different things, and it carried over even into his retirement time, but yet he had planned for it, and they were able to live off their retirement and pension and savings, and live comfortably. They had to watch. You couldn't just go out and do whatever they wanted, but yet they were able to live comfortably and live in a nice condominium and live in Florida and do the things that they wanted to do.
Yeah, and be very generous. They were very generous too. We would come down. We were a young couple, young family, and we had a free place to stay. But they even covered our meals for us and everything. It was, a super big blessing to us. But they were generous to us.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and we're talking about how people thought about money. They were conservative. Probably weren't what I would consider risky investors.
Not at all.
Not at all. Very conservative. No. But yet God blessed them. They were always very generous. They were always willing to give and to pour into people. And we were talking about how we grew up and a lot of the sayings that we heard. And it's pretty interesting to hear how people think about money. And some of the stuff you always hear growing up. Money's evil. You've heard that one. Money corrupts. Money can't buy love. And or money can't buy happiness. One of my favorite was talking to a guy one time, country boy from Logan County, and he was talking about this one fellow that had done well in his life and had a lot of money, and his description of that was, well, he's got enough money to burn up a wet mule. And so that's a good one. But yet there's almost a tinge of envy in that statement, and how they do it. And people do get there. Penny wise, pound foolish. Penny saved is a penny earned. A day late and a dollar short. Yeah, that was one of the ones you heard a lot. Whenever times were bad, it was a day late and a dollar short. One of my favorite lines that my dad always used to say, and this is one about prosperity more than anything else. Hey, it's only a nickel difference to go first class.
I like that one.
Yeah, and my mom always used to say green's a good color on me. So if you were giving her a birthday gift, money was just fine. Yeah. So, but that's our what we're going to get into today. We've got a lot of areas that we need to go to, and we're going to get back into those, and we'll be back in our next segment.
We'll be back with more Life and Times with Mike and Terry. Welcome back in to Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day.
Well, welcome back to Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day. We are talking about money. We're talking about retirement. We're talking about leaving a legacy, an inheritance to your children. I'd like to talk a little bit about, we were talking about Mike's mom and dad, about how they had lived on their retirement, the money that they had saved, and they had that discipline in managing their money. Mike was sharing with me that his dad had a saying, and of course he's picked it up from somewhere, but we don't know where, but it was a very wise saying. It's the paths of least resistance make men and streams crooked. Isn't that interesting?
That's good.
Yeah, and least resistance. I think of laziness.
Taking the easy way out.
Taking the easy way out. Mm-hmm. When you're dealing with money, you really do need to be disciplined. And I have a couple of scriptures that I'd like you to really consider. And I think this is really going to capture some people's, what they're thinking about in their hearts. It says in Haggai 1, verses 6 and 7, ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. I think that scripture is so appropriate to how you deal with your money. Think about it. Raiment, what you're going to eat, all of your house, all these things they're things that are part of life. And so many people, it seems like they putting it in a bag of holes. And I love this scripture. This is inspiring scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, and this is familiar to most everybody. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. And the NIV says, but for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future.
That really takes into effect that God is always good, because, a lot of people don't believe that. And I believe that with all my heart, that he does have a good plan for us.
Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children. And 2 Corinthians 9, verses 8 through 11 in the Amplified. And God is able to make all grace, every favor and earthly blessing come to you in abundance, so that you may always and under all circumstances, and whatever the need, be self-sufficient, possessing enough to require no aid or support, and furnished in abundance for every good work and charitable donation.
I think that means any and all situations that could ever arise in our life, God's got it handled, don't you think?
Absolutely. We're business people and we're entrepreneurs. We're not afraid. We're not afraid to step out. We're not afraid to make a mistake. Yeah. We're not.
Yeah, you and Dale are that way.
Oh, yes. Definitely so. And I think that's one of the reasons I think God really brought us together was a few years ago. Those of you who are listening have ever tried, this is a shameless plug, Scraggle Pop Kettle Corn.
Yay, love it.
A few years ago, my husband Dale and I began this business actually in our backyard of the duplex that we were living in currently, and we were doing a festival down on the river. And this is before we brought in a couple more business partners as well, and it was just he and I and his uncle doing these things. And for some crazy reason, this guy comes down on the river and says, I want to pray over your business. And my husband Dale said, well, absolutely, sure. And so they pray and they connect, and then that was it. And then I don't even know how long after that, the paths crossed again, and that guy that prayed over our business was Mike Day. and Ken, I believe, was down there. Is that right? Was he with that day?
I think it was Butch and somebody else, and then hooked up later. But then we advertised a piece of equipment in Craigslist, and somebody came up and ended up being a friend of Dale's, and they'd called Dale to come and help them lift the piece of equipment, and we connect again, and then then Pastor Kevin ends up coming to. At some point, and we all end up just really kind of coming together and being a part of each other's life.
Yeah. It is so interesting. It's so interesting to see how God gets people to intersect with each other.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of quotes and how people write things. I love to read, and I enjoy a turn of a phrase. And this one caught my attention several years ago at a conference we were at. I'm willing to do today what others won't, so I can have tomorrow what others don't.
Yeah.
And that is, that discipline that we're talking about, that it does take discipline. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Very true.
Very true.
Very true.
Very true. So
if you're expecting a different outcome and you don't change something,
you're foolish.
Yeah, you're foolish. That's right.
Yeah, right. Successful people are always looking for opportunities to help others. Unsuccessful people are asking, what's in it for me? That's Brian Tracy, and we really enjoy some of his books.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved this line in particular because generosity and looking to help other people, that is breeding grounds for great return.
That's sowing into people, sowing into situations that gives God a great opportunity to give you a harvest later on.
Just mention Brian Tracy he writes business books, success in business books, and somebody else that I've enjoyed and have learned a lot from is Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
That book changed my life.
Yes. Because it gets your mind to think about things differently. Wealthy people think different.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've had opportunity to be around really, really wealthy people. And
I was sitting with a gentleman here recently, and I would venture to say he's probably a billionaire. And we're talking about money, and we're talking about different things. And I said, you think differently than I do about this stuff. And he just began to tell me, he says, look, he says, it's nothing more than about zeros. They make this thing called a spreadsheet, and it'll hold as many as you want. And he said, once you get past that point and quit worrying about the zeros, he said, it really becomes very, very much easier to do. And I mean, Robert Kiyosaki, that talks exclusively about how people who have money think completely and entirely differently than people who don't.
Absolutely. So I do encourage you to go and part of one of your disciplines is going to be learning about money and how to make it work for you. I thought this was an interesting quote from Robert Kiyosaki. The love of money is the root of all evil. We already said that. But he said, and the lack of money is the root of all evil. Isn't that interesting?
That's very good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Money is like oxygen. You don't really know that you need it and that it's as important until you don't have it.
Yeah.
And then it's,
Yes. Well, I will tell you right now, when Mike and I first met each other, we were a young family, young couple, and we just, started out like everybody else. And we were poor. We were really poor. But over, looking at the scriptures, renewing our minds to the scriptures about prosperity.
We started tithing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'd like to read just a few things that we've gathered over the years. No thought dwells rent-free. Every thought that abides in your heart has to pay up, be it poverty or be it wealth. Isn't that a great saying? Rich people play to win. We have played not to lose. Rich people think huge. We think have enough to get by and a little for fun. Rich people focus on opportunity, and we focus on obstacles. Rich people admire other wealthy people, and yet most people resent and envy success. Rich people promote ideas and values, and we hesitate and think why it can't be done. I had a byline on my email. It says, let the person who says it can't be done get out of the way of the person who's getting it done. That would be me.
That's good. That's
well,
good.
We've got another segment coming up. We're going to get into.
Got about like a minute left. No, you have two. You're at 151.
Okay, let me start back over, and you can just edit.
You're good.
All right. Rich people think both. And I'm going to give you a little, I love that, because I'm not an either or, I'm an and both. And when we go on vacation.
I'll tell you, the contractor's the one that had the greatest one. We were getting ready to build a garage, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And he says, Mike, don't you ever tell her I said this, but she wants to supersize everything.
I embrace that. I'm a big thinker, and I'm a big dreamer.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't, then I wouldn't have extra to give. And we're going to actually talk about that in the next segment. Not having that poverty mindset, but having a wealth mindset.
Yeah, I mean, some of those lines are great too. I love the one about problems. It says, rich people think bigger than their problems. We think our problems are big. Yeah, and it's just problems are opportunities to exhibit faith in my book.
Amen.
And how you react at any given point makes a huge difference in the outcome. Just within the first few minutes, if you can get your mind strapped down and moving in the right direction, it will make a huge difference in how quickly and how good the outcome is in a situation.
So true.
Yeah, and money, man, I tell you, it's one of those things that just causes, when there is problems with money, it is one of those things that causes people's thinking to spin out of control and to go down the drain, so to speak. But we're going to wrap this segment up, and we'll be back, and we've got quite a few other things to talk about, and we'll get to that in just a minute.
We'll be back with more Life and Times with Mike and Terry. Welcome Welcome back in to Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day.
All right, well, welcome back. Wanted to continue on our show here and talk about retirement. We've talked about the different things that kind of leading up to it, mindsets of money, how people think about it, how people regard it, what problems it can cause, things along those lines. We'll talk about just generally speaking that it's our responsibility to leave an inheritance for our children's children, and or further if we can. And I believe that that's a big key in this is the desire to leave a legacy, to leave an inheritance. I heard one person use the word dynasty.
Yep.
So dynastic thinking in regard to leaving an inheritance, I believe is a good thing. I believe we should affect as many generations as we possibly can.
There are families that, they live that, and even in our country, you think of the Rockefellers,
A lot of people, they have a way of thinking about that. They go, it's like, well, if I got enough for me and mine, if I got enough just to take care of my needs here, then that's all good. And I really, I believe that that's a poverty mindset. I believe that that's almost being selfish, because I see so much about being generous and being able to give. And if you've got just enough to take care of you, then what have you got left to give? And I know that may upset some people, but I mean, because I'm not getting down on people because they don't have something. I'm getting down on the mindset of the reason I don't want any more than what I have is because I don't need any more because I've got what I want.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So, recently, we were again talking about these subjects, and we started talking about when did we really start. And we actually sat down with a financial planner. This has been quite a few years ago. And we sat down and we discussed, and he had a list of questions that really kind of made you think. It's like, well, what are your goals in life? And he dream. What kind of lifestyle do you really want to have? If you had an opportunity to pick it, what would you want? So again, we're both very capable of of dreaming big. We can supersize some of those dreams. And so we thought about what our goals and what our lifestyles and what we wanted to do. And really, a big portion of it really centered around traveling and doing ministry work. Mm-hmm. And in thinking about that, he said, some of your desires are incongruous with with what you're doing. He says, why do you need a house like you described if it's going to be a large house and all this stuff? If the majority of your time that you're going to be traveling, wouldn't you rather take the money for the large house and put it into the being able to travel and to do the ministry? It's like, yeah.
And I said no.
You have since changed your mind, though. Yeah, we can have something that's very easy to live in and comfortable and all of that without going to maybe some of the extremes that when he told us to dream big that we did, and thinking about where to put those resources. Not that you can't have a big house, not that you can't have a nice house, but just thinking about really what your end goal is. Now, everybody's goal may not be travel and ministry, right. So that would not be incongruous to their life. So
Nobody on this show.
Yeah. Yeah, really. No, most of the people we associate with are about ministry and travel.
Yes.
So we do it on a regular basis. We're usually out doing itinerant ministry anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks, 1 to 3 weekends per month.
Love it.
And our home church misses us.
Yes, we do. Good grief, we don't like it, but we love it. We'll send, but we don't like it. I'm playing.
I understand.
So our age and our goals, we continue to hone them as time goes by and continue to look. We, look at things like risk tolerance. Believe it or not, most people say that your risk tolerance should go down the older you get. Actually, my risk tolerance has gone up because I say that faith is spelled R-I-S-K. I believe that there are things at times that you have to walk out when you don't really know what the answer is going to be. You have to step out, and sometimes it looks like you're stepping out on air, that there's nothing going to be underneath your feet, and God lifts up underneath of you. And,
but that's, again, being led by the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. We have learned, we have proven God now herewith. He has been faithful, and He gives us strategies, and we walk out on them, and we get the benefit of it.
Yeah, so find out figure out what your risk tolerance is, but maybe you need to up it a little bit in understanding. Some of the things when it comes to retirement, getting started is the big key. You got to get started. Figure out whether or not you've got any type of investment retirement program at your work. 401k, 403b, whatever's out there available to you. Any type of, sometimes it's a self-employment IRA, whatever those are. There's the big differences is those that I just named are pre-tax investments, so you don't have to pay the tax on the money before you get it in there. Now you do have to pay the tax when it comes back out, but those are some of the best ways to invest is on pre-tax money. So you get it in there, you get it working for you. I read something today about Warren Buffett, probably the third or fourth richest man in the world, $55 billion in net worth. And they asked him, it's like, okay, what would you consider, the best way for people to invest? And he says, I'll tell you what I'm doing here. He says, I have obviously a gift at doing this. But when it comes to time to take care of my wife and to take care of those who I love, he said, it's as simple as this. I'm going to take one mutual fund, and a mutual fund is nothing more than a group of stocks and bonds and different types of investments put together, and that fund is managed by an individual. So they say, we want a little bit of Exxon, we want a little bit of Walmart, we want a little bit of whatever, and they bring all these stocks and funds together, and they call it, and they come up with a name for it. Okay. That's what a mutual fund is. In this particular instance, he said, one fund that I'm going to invest 90% of everything that I've got in one fund to take care of my family. And I'm going to pick an S&P, that's Standard & Poor's, 500 index fund. That's it. One that has very low rates, that the managers get paid. So basically, he's an S&P 500 index fund. And I think he said Vanguard was the one that he recommended. And so a guy who's worth billions and who has great strategies and understanding of the markets and how all this stuff was, he's going to be in a simple index fund. I went back and I checked what these index funds have been doing over a period of time. And basically what they do is they just buy the stocks that are on the S&P 500. And that's how they do it. And the most recent, I think, it's running about an 18% increase over the last year, 26 over the past 3, 20 over the last 5. Even over the last decade, it's still up over 9%, I believe is what it is. And those are great returns. You take a $1,000 investment for a kid, and you put it in an S&P 500 index fund. Don't touch it. Just leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Those kind of interest rates that we're talking about there, that would be worth $750,000 to $1 million by the time that kid retired. Mm-hmm. You'd make them a millionaire, and you never have to do anything other than just let it set and let it continue to grow. Compound interest is the closest thing to magic that you'll ever see. Mm-hmm. And so I really found it interesting that somebody even on that level, that his investment strategy was so minimal. It was 90% of it goes into an S&P 500 index fund, 10% of it goes into basically a cash basis, like what they would call a money market or something like that, so that there was money available that they could move around quickly and easily.
What's the best thing as far as like looking into a Roth IRA?
Roth IRAs basically allow you to invest after tax, which means that it grows inside, and then you don't have to pay taxes on it coming back out. A lot of these things that I'm talking about, probably, I guess I should put a disclaimer on here. I'm not an SEC licensed financial planner, but you should really probably get in touch with somebody. Everybody's going to have different strategies about how they like to do it, but sitting down and doing some reading on the internet first, just to get an understanding of the terms and things like that's a really good place to start. But I see that there are good places for a Roth. A Roth is a great thing for a young person to start on because they can put that money in there. You got to look at your levels of your cutoff levels. A 401k in this day and time, I believe, is going to allow you to invest about $15,000 to $17,000 a year. Whereas in a standard IRA, it's only going to let you put in about $4,000.
Right.
So you've got some different cutoff levels there.
You mentioned the 401k. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned checking with your employer. I know that a lot of employers match whatever up to a certain point.
You wouldn't believe. I mean, we are an employer. You wouldn't believe how many people bypass their raise of matching funds because they just won't sign up on the 401k and put their money in it. On a 401k that's for a small company, we can match what they call a 5 for 4. If they put 5% in, I can match 4. People are passing up a 4% raise because they don't want to have enough discipline in order to put 5% of their income in. And the thing is most of those are what they call, when we talk about something, how quickly it vests, if it's vested. Most of the 401ks, the companies basically vest almost immediately, so the money's theirs. They don't have to wait for it. And it's in there. In a good 401k system, you can actually borrow your money out of it if you want to, and then pay it back, pay yourself back interest. Talk about a neat concept.
Yeah.
Borrow it from
That
yourself.
we've actually utilized that,
Yeah.
and our sons utilized that. Our
That's
office
good.
manager utilized it.
Yeah,
I think
all of
what
our
is it, up
employees
to
do.
half of what's in your 401k?
Yeah, half of your current worth, you can do that, and then basically you're going to pay your money back. I think it's about 5% interest over a period of time, and take it right out of your paycheck. But we've got, when you look at those types of things, those type of investments, know what your company offers, know what they'll do for you, and look at that first, because that's usually the easiest. You don't have any big setup. You usually sign up right in your office. You tell them what you want taken out of your check, and that's a huge key. If it doesn't get into your pocket first, it's very much not missed. So have it taken out of your check. Have something drawn out of your check that way, or out of your checking account on a regular basis.
And most banks also, because I know a lot of this is daunting as far as whenever you think of financial planners and stuff like that. A lot of banks, especially in this area, if you go to them and just say you want to speak to a financial advisor, they'll be able to put you with a person, even personality type, to be able to help you. Because I know you all talked about that. That was what set me on a course, was a good financial advisor.
Yeah, find people that you trust. Because there are people out there who are about the commission, and they may not be giving you the whole scoop, or that may be tainted towards the fact that they're going to make money on it. Using insurance as an investment, I've never agreed with that. That's one of the things we can talk about in our next segment a little bit. But they have these big insurance policies that are about investing for retirement. And honestly, when you take an insurance policy and you put it with a retirement policy, I believe that's a bad choice. Because believe me, the insurance companies are in business to make money. They're not in business to make you money. And so I look at one of the things that we've learned a long time ago was buy term and invest the difference. Buy term insurance. It's very cheap life insurance. And then take the difference in the premium that you would have bought that expensive insurance policy that was about retirement, and then invest that into a mutual fund. So those are some of the things that we can talk about here in the next segment.
We'll be back with more Life and Times with Mike and Terry. Welcome back in to Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day.
All right, well, we're back for our next segment here, and we're sitting here. This is Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day, and we've got Stephanie Scragg here with us, and we're really talking about retirement. We're talking about the different options that people have to set up a retirement account. We're talking about the mindset to change about money. We're talking about some of the things that you can put in place to help move yourself toward retirement, and it's never too late. We were just talking about 401ks and 403bs and Roth IRAs and regular IRAs and all of that. Now, there is another kind of retirement option. It's called the sell everything and be a cross-country CDL driver and live in the cab of the truck and see the country.
Sign me up.
Actually, now come on, you guys. Some people, that is a dream of theirs,
viable option.
and a viable option.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a truck driver, but I
at
wouldn't
all.
want to be forced into doing it. If that was my only
Our
opportunity.
financial director's husband's a truck driver.
Nothing wrong with that. No. But it's not a good retirement plan. So that's what
Your
you're
parents are not a good retirement
Yeah,
plan.
your parents are not a good retirement plan, right? Yeah. Your children are not a good retirement plan.
Yeah, Mom.
It's covered all the way.
Lots of people, they talk about they want to do a food truck. Which that's okay. Being in business is not if you haven't gotten to the point where you have everything saved, then a small business or a job or whatever is definitely an option. One of the things that we look at in life, and you never hear us even talk about it, is we do not count on Social Security. I don't know how long it's going to be around. I don't know how long it's going to be viable. I don't know if it's going to apply to me whenever I get older. If it does, great. It'll be an added extra bonus. But basically, the way we look at it is we're on our own and trying to figure this out, and that's the direction that we're going to move with it. But how to start a business, that's something that we can talk about in the future on a future show about how to get it done and what it takes.
And not only how to start a business, but should you start a business?
Yeah.
There is a lot of myths about being in business for yourself. So we do plan on doing a show on how to get started if you're going to get started and should you get started.
But there are other ways besides 401ks. I mean, we've got a friend that we know that he has basically over the period of time taken and invested in antique cars. He loves cars. He loves to work on them. Some of them he keeps and puts in his collection. Others of them he works on them and flips them and sells them. And he makes a good living for himself in retirement. It's something that he loves doing. It keeps him busy. And
well, one of the things he shared with me is he said, I have this big chunk of money that I'd saved, and I was making 1% or less in the bank. He said, no. I took all my money out and I bought antique cars, and I forget what return he's got on his money, like anywhere from 12% to 18%.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing.
But he turned his passion
Right.
and his knowledge into an investment portfolio for himself.
Yeah.
Now,
the other side of this is okay, that's antique cars. This guy has some knowledge in the area. It's something he knows how to do and something he's done. I don't suggest collectibles as a form of retirement. Think of Beanie Babies and Cabbage Patch Dolls
My
are not a
Pez
good idea.
dispensers ain't going to make it.
Yeah, right.
no.
Yeah, those are very much things that come and go with time, and one day they might be worth a lot of money, and then they might not be worth anything at all.
I wanted to remind you, because we were talking earlier this morning about forms of investments, and I wanted to remind you, speaking of collections, precious metals, and people think that those commemorative coins are going to be really worth something. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, precious metals, you really ought to stay in the base metal itself. If you're going to buy something, it should be just for the value of the gold plus whatever the dealer's getting above and beyond what they call the spot price, which is the current daily price of that particular metal. Again, it takes a tremendous amount of knowledge to understand what they call numismatic value. Which would be the collectible value of a particular coin. It's only going to have a certain amount of worth if you melt it down. So it might be $10 melted down, but yet because it was made in 1540, it might be worth $100,000. So, but that can also change. Well, what if all of a sudden it went from there was only 2 in the world to they find a chest of them, and now there's 5,000 of them in the world where that value changes and you were invested at the high end.
Well,
So
I always think of, you'll be late on TV and they'll show, the Walking Liberty commemorative coin, only $19.95. And if you act now, you can get 2. And that's what I was really thinking about. Was sometimes people think, I'll buy a bunch of those.
And whose basement are they coming out?
But it's the numismatic value collecting is it's nothing wrong with it. It's something you may be interested in, something like to do. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can really get burned on those type of coins and what the values are and whether or not they really are what people say they are. So if you're going to buy silver or gold, buy silver and gold for its base value, what they call its melt value.
Talking about different retirement instruments or investment instruments. Another friend of ours, for the last 10 years, has been buying houses to rent. And, again, you do need to have some savvy regarding that. If you have no experience whatsoever in being a handyman, then you're going to need to have a
there's ways to
management
accomplish
company.
that. Yeah, management companies and contractors and things like that. But, I mean, honestly, most of the multimillionaires that I know have done it in real estate.
Yes.
And we're actually going to have a show about that, about real estate, how to buy and to sell. We've learned a lot about that.
Yep, real estate is definitely one of the ways that you can look at investing. But again, cash investments in 401ks, that's really the base where you got to start. You got to start somewhere there. Some of the things that we want to talk about is life needs to be looked at as being simple, but there's a difference between being simple and being poor. When you retire, my parents, they simplified. They kind of sold the style of house that they needed. They sold a lot of their items that they had, the furniture and things like that. But it was about them being able to take that money, continue to invest, and can move where they wanted to move, live where they wanted to live. They wanted to be near the mall, near the beach, near the whatever in sunny Florida, and that was their idea of retirement, and that's what blessed them, and that's what they did, and that's how they accomplished it. But don't take the idea of simplification and go over to a poverty mindset with it. It doesn't have to be living in poverty in order to retire or to be simple.
That's wise.
Simplify does not equal poverty. We talked about that selfish mindset too, where people just want enough for what they need. Well, how about having enough to give and enough to take care of yourself and to take care of your family?
I think, what's that line from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, that movie?
I want enough for me and mine. If you're around our house at all, you're going to hear about almost every funny line from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I love it.
So
How you come singing a tin can?
Gave us $10 for singing in a tin can.
What's funny is we have watched it many times.
My mom had never seen it, and one of the lines that she loved was there at the beginning, and it says "I'm with you fellers,"
She would sit there and laugh, and she had never even seen the movie.
And I know everybody thinks we're crazy out there, but you go watch the movie if you've never seen it. It takes about the third time to really start getting it. It's actually based on Homer's Odyssey. If you look at all the stuff that's in there, and people sometimes don't get that or understand.
The first time through, I
yeah.
and I didn't like the movie at all.
Until the second or so time when I started to explain some things to you.
And now I think it's the most funny movie. Yeah. And we've watched it so many times that we even have friends who say, when I say, hey, you want to come over and watch a movie? They say, if it's not, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes, oh yes.
The music was great there.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite sections. But one of the things that I think you wanted to talk about was giving.
Yeah, that we were talking about that poverty mindset is not to get caught up in just thinking about you. Again, if you sow, if you give, it's gonna come back to you. Ephesians 4:28 says, "Let him that stole steal no more, but rather," and here's the emphasis, "let him labor, working with his hands, the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth." And then in Luke 6:38 it says, "Give," and it starts with "give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that you mete out withal, it shall be measured to you again."
Yeah, let's start talking about some of the boots on the ground type stuff. What can you do? How can you change things? The first place we started was budgeting. Started out with on paper. Then I went to spreadsheets, and then I figured out a way to trick QuickBooks into doing it. And then we figured out then that there was a program out there called Envelopes, MVELOPES. You'll hear me talk about it all the time. It changed our lives in budgeting and how we do things. It's actually an online budgeting tool.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, you control what you spend. Now, I know that in a lot of instances, people are not going to have a lot of extra income, but I know you can develop, or I know you can find some. Look at how many, look at how many Monsters you drink. Look at how many, Red Bulls. Look at how,
Starbucks.
Yeah, Starbucks. Whatever it is. Look at that. Look at how many times you eat out dinner, and you save a few dinners a month, and you save a few pops or caffeinated drinks or whatever. Or if you're a smoker, you eliminate a little bit of that. Whatever it is that you can do, and start putting that money aside. If it's 20, 40, 60, $100 a month, there's a place to start. One of the things that we did, we purchased Financial Peace University, Dave Ramsey. Another situation where I know that
It took us to the next level.
yeah, and in the beginning, some people don't like the level of discipline that it would require in order to do what Dave's talking about. I think Steph has a story on that one.
That was the year.
Yeah.
I spent a year there 1 week.
Yeah, that's right. But we don't want to say Dave's hard, but Dave definitely got a regimented plan, and it's good. We actually bought Financial Peace University. I mean, we loved it. One of the things to talk about in Financial Peace University is, or Dave talks about in all this stuff, is having an emergency fund. Basically you're looking at about 50% of U.S. households would never be able to handle an emergency of $5,000 without going into debt to do it.
Right.
And so to start an emergency fund, start with 500, start with 1,000, do something, putting a little bit of money aside so that the next emergency that comes up doesn't send you into a tizzy, so to speak, and that you can take care of it. You got to look at, living from paycheck to paycheck is no way to live. Some of the biggest things about money are, and health. I mean, those are the two biggest things that people have problems with, and that get into consternation, and it causes divorces and all those other things. Get that $1,000 in there and start there, and don't touch it. Try to build towards having 3 to 6 months is one of the things that Dave Ramsey talks about. Try to get to the point
living
where
expenses.
try to get to the point where you're putting 10 to 15% of your retirement in your IRA. Delayed pleasure. Quit thinking that you got to have it now. You can sometimes save for things and pay cash for them. That's really a good idea.
My parents did.
Yeah, delayed pleasure is a form of maturity. Have your employer scrape money off the top. We talked about doing direct deposits and things like that into your savings.
Before it gets in your hands.
Before your check's cut. It's absolutely the easiest way to save. But there's lots of different things that we can talk about in future shows about how to do these things, how to get your savings, how to start and get your retirement built up. But the biggest key is start now. Do something. Figure out something to do. Get a budget going. Get some money being taken out of your paycheck. Do something. Get started now, because it's never too late.
Position yourself for God to have something to work with.
Right. And that gives us a lot of places to go in the future on the show. So I know we've got a lot of ideas out there, and we're stirring your thinking, and that's really what we want to do. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on Life and Times with Mike and Terry Day. Join us next week at the same time on this station, or connect with us on the show page at ignitefm.com.